Chapter 1. A Solitary Arrival. Captain Eli Mason's spacecraft shuddered violently as it broke through the atmosphere of Xantha, the control panels flashing a symphony of warnings that went unheeded in the void of space. As the ship plummeted toward the lush, green surface of the planet, Eli braced himself for impact, his training the only thing keeping his panic at bay. With a deafening crash, the ship finally came to rest among the towering fern-like trees. Smoke billowed from the wreckage, and for a moment, everything was still. Shaking off the disorientation, Eli unstrapped himself and checked his systems. Miraculously, he was alive and, more importantly, unharmed. He hadn't expected to find himself marooned in an uncharted system far from the space lanes patrolled by the Galactic Empire. His mission was supposed to be routine reconnaissance of the outer sectors. Instead, an unexpected meteor storm had disabled his ship and knocked him off course. "Great," Eli muttered as he grabbed his survival pack. "Just great." As he climbed out of the wreck, a figure approached through the mist. A tall, slender form with luminescent skin that seemed to blend with the natural environment. It was a Xanthian, a native of the planet. The alien stopped a few feet away, watching curiously. "Hello there," Eli called out, hoping for a peaceful interaction. "I mean no harm. I'm Captain Eli Mason of Earth." The Xanthian tilted her head, considering his words. She responded in a flowing, musical language that Eli couldn't hope to understand, her voice soothing yet laced with caution. "Sorry, I don't understand," Eli said, feeling foolish. He tapped on his translator device, hoping it could make sense of her language. After a few seconds, the device chirped, and her words were translated. "I am Naira. Why are you here, Eli of Earth?" "Crash-landed. My ship was damaged by a meteor storm. I'm lost," Eli explained, gesturing to the smoldering wreckage. Naira's eyes widened slightly, a sign of understanding, or perhaps surprise. "You are far from your home. This is not safe. The Empire watches this planet closely." Eli's heart sank at the mention of the Galactic Empire. "I figured as much. I saw the satellites on my way down. I need to repair my ship or contact my fleet. Can you help?" Naira looked hesitant but nodded slowly. "I will help you, Eli, but we must be cautious. Follow me." Eli followed her through the dense undergrowth, their path lit by the bioluminescent flora of the planet. As they walked, Naira explained that the Empire had long been interested in Xantha for its rich resources but had restrained direct control to maintain secrecy. "My people resist their oversight. We value our freedom, our way of life," she said, a hint of pride in her voice. "I understand that," Eli replied, thinking of his own distant home. "Back on Earth, we're always fighting for our freedom too." Naira led Eli to a hidden cave adorned with natural crystals that cast prismatic light across the walls. Inside, Eli was surprised to see a stash of technology that seemed incongruent with the naturalistic philosophy Naira had described. "This is my sanctuary," Naira said. "I study here, away from the Empire's eyes. I think I have some tools that might help with your ship." As they set to work, the unlikely pair shared stories of their worlds, their cultures, and their personal defiance against the encroaching control of the Galactic Empire. Despite the vast differences between them, Eli found a kindred spirit in Naira. Together, they began the painstaking task of repairing his ship and forging a plan to evade the watchful eyes of the Empire orbiting above. As the first chapter of their unexpected partnership unfolded, Eli couldn't shake the feeling that crashing on Xantha might not have been a mistake after all. Maybe, just maybe, it was destiny. Chapter 2. The Language of Science. Eli adjusted his position on the makeshift workbench Naira had set up. The scattered fragments of his ship's wreckage lay across the cavern floor, mingling with Xanthian tools whose functions he could only guess. The air inside the cave was cool, punctuated by the soft glow of crystal clusters embedded in the walls. "Pass me that piece." "No, the one with the orange light," Eli said, pointing. Naira tilted her head, considering his words. "What is orange?" she asked, her voice flowing like the planet's streams. Eli blinked. "Right, orange. Like a sunrise back on Earth." Kind of warm-looking. Naira stared at him, her pupils contracting slightly. We do not call that color orange. We call it Zareth. She handed him the part. This one. Yeah, that's it, Eli confirmed. He studied it for a moment, turning it over in his hands. It's interesting. On Earth, we have one name for a color. Here, you have another. Makes me wonder what else is different, and what might be the same. Much is different, Naira said, carefully placing a translucent panel on the bench. But some things are shared. We both shape the world around us. We both create. This machine of yours. Why is it so important to you? Eli gave a faint smile. Back home, I was always a builder. Not big structures, mind you. I worked on machines, ships, anything that could take people from one place to another. It's not just work for me, it's how I understand things. When I look at this mess of wires and circuits, I can almost hear it telling me what it needs. Naira nodded slowly, as if weighing his words. You listen to the tools you make. That is, not unlike what we do. We speak to the living elements of our planet, and they answer. She paused, then added, not in words, but in ways we have learned to feel. Perhaps you and I are not so different after all. Maybe, Eli said, feeling a flicker of connection. He set down the piece and stretched his arms. So how does it work? This, talking to the planet thing? Naira hesitated. It is difficult to explain. We do not speak with words, as you and I are doing now. Instead, we observe patterns, shifts in the air, subtle changes in the light. Over time, we understand what the planet needs, and we give it what it asks. In return, it provides. Eli scratched his chin, intrigued. Sounds almost like a barter system. You help the planet, it helps you. On Earth, we kind of take what we need and deal with the consequences later. Naira's golden-hued eyes narrowed slightly. And the consequences? Well, Eli said, picking up a thin metal rod from the bench. We're learning the hard way that you can't keep taking without giving something back. It's gotten pretty bad in some places. She looked at him thoughtfully. Perhaps that is why you ended up here. Perhaps you needed to see that balance is possible. Eli chuckled dryly. I'm not here to learn lessons, Naira. I just want to fix my ship and get home. Naira tilted her head again, but this time there was a faint smile. Yet you are here working with me, speaking with me. You may learn more than you expect. Eli raised an eyebrow. You always this philosophical? Or am I just lucky? I am a scientist, Naira replied, her smile growing. But science is not only equations and experiments. It is understanding the forces that bind everything together, including us. Eli leaned back against the rock wall, letting out a long breath. I guess that's fair. I wouldn't have survived this long if I didn't try to understand things. Still, I never expected to be sitting in a glowing cave on a distant planet, talking about balance with a Xanthian scientist. And I never expected to be repairing an alien ship with a human who fell from the sky, Naira countered. Life is full of surprises. Sure is, Eli said, grinning. He held up the part Naira had handed him earlier. Now let's see if we can figure out where this goes. I don't suppose you've got a manual lying around. She gave him a look he couldn't quite interpret, though it seemed amused. No manuals. Only what we learned together. Sounds about right, Eli muttered, turning back to the task at hand. Chapter 3. The Unseen Chains. Eli stared at the holographic map flickering in front of him, its contours drawn by Xanthian technology he barely understood. He could see the orbital platforms, the surveillance nodes, and the resource extraction sites, all interconnected by a dense web of Imperial control. So this is what we're up against? He asked, glancing at Naira. She nodded, her hands clasped behind her back. The Empire's grip is strong. These installations monitor every signal, every movement. My people are constantly watched, even when we try to remain out of sight. Most comply out of fear, but some resist. Eli leaned in closer, trying to get a better sense of the layout. What happens to those who resist? They disappear, Naira said softly. Or worse. The Empire does not tolerate disobedience. They claim to bring order and prosperity, but we know the truth. They take and they control. Eli tapped the side of the projection. Why haven't you told anyone? You can't be the only ones who've figured this out. Naira's eyes flicked to the floor. We tried. At first, we sent warnings to other planets. But the Empire intercepted our messages. Those who knew the truth vanished, and the rest of us learned to stay quiet. For a long time, I thought there was no point in fighting back. But you kept that tech, Eli said, gesturing to the array of devices scattered around the cave. Because I couldn't give up completely, Naira admitted. I continued to study, to observe, and when you arrived, I realized we might have a chance. With your knowledge of your own technology and my understanding of theirs, maybe, just maybe, we can find a way to tell the galaxy what's really happening here. Eli leaned back against the wall. So what you're saying is, we have to figure out how to slip a message past all their defenses. Piece of cake. Naira raised an eyebrow. I detect sarcasm, but yes, that is the idea. Eli chuckled despite himself. All right, so what's our first step? Do we have any allies on this planet? There are some, Naira said. Small groups who share my suspicions, but they don't trust easily. If we can convince them we have a viable plan, they might help us. And by viable plan, you mean? Eli prompted. We need to identify a weak point in the Empire's network, Naira explained. A node that isn't as heavily monitored or a communication relay we can exploit. Once we find that, we can send a message to the rest of the galaxy and reveal the truth. Eli nodded slowly, already running through possible scenarios in his mind. Okay, what about this relay here? He pointed to a faintly glowing point on the hologram. Naira's face grew serious. That one is under heavy surveillance. We would need to draw their attention elsewhere before we could approach it. Diversion, then, Eli said. What kind of distraction would work? Do you have anything they'd consider a real threat? She thought for a moment before replying. There are rumors of an old Xanthian artifact hidden deep in the forests. The Empire has been searching for it for years. If we can plant false signals suggesting we found it, they might shift their focus long enough for us to access the relay. An artifact? Eli asked, intrigued. What is it? Some kind of weapon? No, Naira said. It's a piece of history, an ancient device that predates the Empire's arrival. But they don't understand it, and they fear what they don't understand. That's why they want it. They believe it could upset their control over us. Eli rubbed his chin. Sounds like a good candidate for bait. So we create a fake signal, make it look like we found this thing, and when they come running, we slip into the relay and send out the truth. It's risky, but I've dealt with worse plans. Naira smiled faintly. You make it sound simple. It never is, Eli admitted. But you've got the knowledge and I've got the stubbornness. We'll figure it out. Then we'll need to move quickly, Naira said. Once we start, there's no turning back. If they catch us, they'll silence us for good. Good thing I'm used to tight deadlines, Eli said, flashing a grin. Naira shook her head, though she couldn't hide the hint of amusement in her eyes. You're either very brave or very foolish, Eli of Earth. Probably a little of both, he replied. But hey, no one's ever accused me of backing down from a challenge. Let's get to work. Chapter 4, Threads of Rebellion. Naira stood at the cave's entrance, scanning the lush expanse of the Xanthian forest below. The sky shimmered with the faint glow of distant satellites, ever watchful and ever present. She adjusted her datapad, carefully uploading their false signal. An encrypted message designed to trick the Empire into thinking the long-lost artifact had been discovered. Behind her, Eli was tinkering with a small transmitter. This thing isn't exactly user-friendly, he grumbled. You're sure it'll work? It will work, Naira replied without looking back. You just need to trust me. I do, Eli said. But the last time I used a machine I didn't understand, I ended up stuck in orbit for 6 hours with no oxygen scrubbers. Naira smirked faintly. That explains a lot. Eli shot her a look, but there was no real irritation behind it. So once this thing sends out the signal, how long do we have before they come looking? Not long, Naira said. They monitor this region closely. Once they detect the transmission, they'll move quickly to secure the area. That's when we'll make our move on the relay. Great, Eli said, tightening a cable. No pressure. Naira set down her pad and walked over to inspect his work. You need to connect the power cell here, she said, pointing to a small port on the side of the transmitter. Otherwise, it won't activate. I knew that, Eli muttered, but he made the connection anyway. As they worked, a figure emerged from the shadows of the cave. Tall and broad-shouldered, with deep purple skin and a patchwork of scars, Therek was one of the few allies Naira had managed to recruit. He carried an old plasma rifle slung across his back and wore an expression of quiet determination. Therek, Naira said, nodding to him. Is everything ready? Ready as it's going to be, Therek replied in a low, rumbling voice. But I still don't like this plan. If they catch us, it won't just be us who pay the price. They'll make examples of the others. I understand the risk, Naira said. But if we do nothing, they'll continue to tighten their grip on this world. We can't stay silent any longer. Therek crossed his arms, his gaze shifting to Eli. And you trust this human? Eli straightened up and gave Therek a level look. I'm standing right here, you know? And yeah, I know I'm not from around here, but I've dealt with empires before. They're all the same. Bully people until someone pushes back. Therek's lips curled into a faint smile. You've got guts, human. I'll give you that. Appreciate it, Eli said dryly. Now let's get back to work. We don't have time to sit around trading compliments. With Therek's help, the transmitter was soon assembled and functional. Naira double-checked the encryption on their false signal, ensuring it looked genuine enough to fool the Empire's analysts. She couldn't shake the tension in her chest. This was the most daring move they'd ever made, and the consequences of failure were unthinkable. Okay, Naira said, stepping back. It's ready. When we activate this, we'll have to move fast. Therek, you'll lead the diversion team and keep the Empire's forces occupied. Eli and I will head for the relay. Understood, Therek said. He looked at Eli again. You keep her safe, human. She's the reason any of us are even trying this. Eli nodded, his expression serious. I will. With that, Therek disappeared back into the forest, his heavy steps fading into the distance. Naira watched him go before turning to Eli. We should move. Let's do it, Eli said. He pressed the transmitter's activation switch, and the device emitted a low hum. The false signal was on its way, and the clock was ticking. They moved quickly through the dense undergrowth, keeping to the shadows and avoiding open ground. The forest seemed alive with movement, every rustle of leaves making Eli's hand drift toward the blaster holstered at his side. Naira led the way, her steps sure and deliberate. So, Eli said as they ran, what happens if this relay is more heavily guarded than we thought? Then we improvise, Naira replied. She glanced back at him. You've faced worse, haven't you? Probably, Eli said. But I didn't exactly keep a scrapbook. Naira smiled briefly, her tension momentarily easing. Then we'll add this to your collection of close calls. The relay came into view. A sleek, metallic structure nestled in a clearing, surrounded by a faint energy barrier. 2 Imperial drones hovered near its entrance, scanning for any intruders. Naira crouched behind a tree, gesturing for Eli to do the same. How do we get past that? Eli whispered, eyeing the drones. I can disable them, Naira said, pulling a small device from her pack. But it will take a few moments. Cover me. Eli nodded, gripping his blaster. Got it. Naira moved silently toward the barrier's control panel, her fingers dancing over the interface. The drones remained oblivious for now, their attention focused outward. Eli kept his eyes on the clearing, his heart pounding as he scanned for any sign of reinforcements. Hurry it up, Naira, he muttered under his breath. Almost there, she said, her voice steady despite the tension. Finally, with a soft chime, the energy barrier flickered and disappeared. The drones powered down, their lights fading to dark. Eli let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Nice work. Let's move. They rushed into the relay's control room, the walls lined with sleek consoles and glowing screens. Naira immediately got to work, tapping into the Empire's network and uploading their message to the secured channels. "This is it," Naira said, her fingers flying over the controls. "Once it's sent, there's no going back." "Do it," Eli said, standing guard by the entrance. "We didn't come this far just to back out now." With a final keystroke, Naira sent the message. The screen lit up with confirmation, and for a brief moment, a sense of triumph washed over her. They had done it. The truth was on its way to the galaxy. Chapter 5: A Galactic Spark. Eli crouched behind a jagged outcrop of rocks, his breath coming in shallow gasps. The Xanthian forest around him pulsed with life, the faint luminescence of the flora casting strange shadows in the dark. Beside him, Naira's gaze was fixed on the small holographic communicator in her hand. "They're moving," she said softly, glancing at Eli. "The Empire's forces are leaving the sector." "Then the signal worked," Eli said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "They think the artifact's real." Naira nodded, though her expression was guarded. "For now, we need to keep the pressure on. If we stop now, they'll figure out the deception." Eli smirked. "What happened to just one message and we're done?" "That was before I knew you'd be this useful," Naira replied, a faint smile tugging at her lips. She pocketed the communicator and stood. "We have a chance to rally others. The Empire won't be able to contain this forever." Eli rose to his feet, wincing as his muscles protested. "Sounds like a big leap from where we are. Who's gonna listen to a couple of renegades and a fake signal?" Naira said, her voice steady. "I won't let that happen." They set off through the forest, their path illuminated by the glowing foliage. The air was cool, and the distant hum of the Empire's drones was growing fainter. Eli couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking a tightrope, one misstep away from disaster. "So, what's the plan now?" he asked, breaking the silence. "We find others who are willing to act," Naira said. "There are small resistance groups scattered across the galaxy, people who already distrust the Empire. We need to show them that change is possible." Eli snorted. "Sounds easy enough." Naira shot him a look. "No one said it would be easy. But you've been in worse situations, haven't you?" "Sure," Eli said, shrugging. "But I had more backup. And better odds." "We'll make our own odds," Naira said. "You and I. We've already taken the first step." Their journey took them deeper into the forest, where the trees grew taller and the air grew heavier. They moved quickly but cautiously, always aware that Imperial patrols could return at any moment. Naira led the way, her movements graceful and sure, while Eli kept one hand on his blaster, ready for anything. As they reached a small clearing, Naira stopped and turned to face Eli. Her golden eyes searched his face, as if looking for some unspoken answer. "What?" Eli asked, raising an eyebrow. "Do you believe we can do this?" Naira asked quietly. Eli hesitated. "I believe we don't have much choice." Naira's expression softened. "That's not an answer." "Look," Eli said, running a hand through his hair. "I've been through enough close calls to know that believing in something doesn't guarantee success. But I'll tell you this. I trust you. If you think we can pull this off, I'll back you all the way." Naira's lips curved into a faint smile. "Good. Because I'm going to need you." The moment lingered, and Eli felt something shift between them. It wasn't just trust. It was something deeper, a connection forged in the crucible of their shared struggle. He didn't have time to dwell on it, though. They had work to do. "Let's get moving," Naira said, turning back toward the forest. "The longer we wait, the more dangerous this gets." "Lead the way," Eli said, falling into step behind her. Their path took them to the edge of a vast canyon, where they found a concealed transport vehicle. Naira explained that it had been left by an earlier resistance group, abandoned when the Empire's patrols closed in. Eli examined the vehicle's controls, impressed by the blend of Xanthian design and salvaged Imperial tech. "This'll do," he said, sliding into the pilot's seat. "Where to?" "There's a neutral trading post not far from here," Naira said. If we're lucky, we'll find someone there who can help spread the message. Eli powered up the vehicle, the engine humming to life. And if we're not lucky? Naira gave him a sidelong glance. Then we'll make our own luck. The journey to the trading post was tense but uneventful. They kept a low profile, avoiding the main routes and sticking to the rugged terrain. When they arrived, the trading post was bustling with activity. Merchants haggling over goods, pilots unloading cargo, and a mix of species moving through the market stalls. Naira led them to a secluded corner where a Xanthian merchant was quietly dismantling a piece of Imperial equipment. The merchant looked up as they approached, his eyes narrowing at the sight of Naira and Eli. What do you want? The merchant asked, his tone wary. We need your help, Naira said, her voice calm but firm. We're building a network, spreading the truth about the Empire. You've seen their control firsthand. It's time to fight back. The merchant scoffed. Fight back? With what? Words? They'll crush us. Not if we stand together, Naira said. The Empire isn't invincible. They rely on fear and division. If we show people that unity is possible. Show them what exactly? The merchant interrupted. That you've got a grand idea and nothing to back it up? Eli stepped forward. We have proof, he said. The artifact. It's real and the Empire knows it. The merchant frowned. You have the artifact? We have what we need to make them believe we do, Eli said. And that belief is enough. If people think the Empire's grip can be broken, they'll start pushing back. The merchant studied them for a long moment, then sighed. You're playing a dangerous game, but I've seen what the Empire does. If there's a chance, even a small one, that this could work, I'll help. Good, Naira said, a spark of determination in her eyes. Because this is just the beginning. Chapter 6. The Convergence. The trading post buzzed with life as beings of all shapes and sizes negotiated deals, swapped stories, and hurried from one stall to the next. Eli leaned against a support beam, scanning the crowd while Naira spoke to one of their new contacts. A Xanthian trader named Cyril had agreed to connect them with another resistance cell, one located on a nearby moon. That cell had the means to amplify their message and broadcast it across multiple systems. Eli adjusted the strap of his pack, his eyes landing on a pair of Empire enforcers strolling through the market. Their black armor and sharp helmets stood out against the eclectic chaos around them. The enforcers weren't looking for anyone in particular. Yet, he turned to Naira as she finished her conversation. Cyril's got a way off this rock? Eli asked, keeping his voice low. Naira nodded. There's a transport leaving in an hour. It'll take us to the resistance outpost. Eli cast another glance at the enforcers. We might need to leave sooner. Those guys look like they're getting curious. Naira followed his gaze, her expression tightening. Then we'll take a shortcut. Cyril gave me the coordinates. We can slip out through the maintenance tunnels. She motioned for him to follow her. As they wove through the crowded marketplace, Naira led them to a narrow passage hidden behind a stack of crates. The tunnel was dimly lit, the air damp and filled with the faint hum of machinery. Eli kept his hand near the blaster at his side, his nerves on edge. You sure this is the right way? He asked after a few minutes. Yes, Naira said, though her tone carried a hint of uncertainty. The tunnels run directly beneath the market. Cyril said they connect to the shipyard. Well, let's hope he wasn't lying, Eli muttered. I'd rather not run into any Empire patrols down here. As they pressed on, the tunnel opened into a small chamber filled with old maintenance equipment. A single light flickered overhead, casting shadows that danced across the walls. Naira checked the coordinates on her device, frowning slightly. Something wrong? Eli asked. No, she said quickly. Just making sure we're on the right path. Eli raised an eyebrow. You don't sound too sure. Naira gave him a look. Do you always question everything? Only when my life's on the line, Eli shot back. Which, let's be honest, happens more often than I'd like. Before Naira could respond, a clattering noise echoed down the tunnel. They both froze, their hands instinctively moving to their weapons. Eli scanned the shadows, his pulse quickening. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. "Yes," Naira said, her voice barely audible. "Stay close." They crept forward, their movements slow and deliberate. The sound grew louder, a scraping metallic noise that sent a chill down Eli's spine. He tightened his grip on his blaster, his senses on high alert. "Naira," he said quietly, "if this is a trap." "It's not," she cut him off. "Just keep moving." The tunnel bent sharply, and as they rounded the corner, they found the source of the noise. A maintenance drone, its legs tangled in debris, thrashed helplessly on the floor. Naira relaxed slightly and approached the drone, her hand outstretched. "Wait," Eli said. "What are you doing?" "It's harmless," she said. "If we can free it, it might be able to guide us the rest of the way." Eli frowned. "And if it alerts the Empire?" "It won't," Naira assured him. "These old models aren't connected to the main network." She knelt beside the drone and began untangling its legs. Eli kept watch, his eyes darting between the tunnel and the shadows behind them. He didn't like sitting still for too long, especially not with the Empire's enforcers above them. "Almost done," Naira said as she worked. The drone let out a series of high-pitched beeps, its legs finally free. It rose on its spindly limbs and turned to face Naira. "Can you take us to the shipyard?" she asked, her tone calm and steady. The drone chirped and began moving down the tunnel. Naira stood and gestured for Eli to follow. "You really trust that thing?" Eli asked as they walked. "It's just a machine," Naira said. "It has no reason to lie." "That's not exactly reassuring," Eli muttered, but he followed anyway. The drone led them through a series of winding passages, its movements precise and purposeful. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged into a larger chamber. The sound of engines and the faint hum of starship power cores filled the air. Eli's tension eased slightly at the sight of the shipyard's docking bays. "There," Naira said, pointing to a sleek transport vessel. "Cyril said it's waiting for us." "Then let's not waste any time," Eli said, quickening his pace. "I've had enough tunnels for one day." As they approached the ship, a figure stepped out from the shadows. It was Therek, the Xanthian resistance fighter they had worked with before. His broad frame and scarred face were unmistakable. "Therek," Naira said, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "Cyril sent me to make sure you got out safely," Therek replied. "You've got the Empire stirred up. They've increased their patrols, and word is they're looking for someone who matches your description." Eli frowned. "That's just what I needed to hear." "You can complain on the ship," Therek said. "Right now, we need to get moving." They boarded the transport and settled into the cramped cockpit. Naira took the co-pilot seat, checking the navigation console, while Therek handled the ship systems. Eli stood behind them, watching the shipyard recede as they lifted off. "Where's the resistance cell?" Eli asked. "How far?" "Just a short jump," Naira said. "But once we're there, we'll need to move quickly. The Empire's forces will catch on soon." "Then let's not waste any time," Eli said. "If this is our shot, we'd better make it count." As the transport entered hyperspace, Eli felt a faint sense of unease. The Resistance's success now depended on their next move, and failure wasn't an option. But for now, he pushed those thoughts aside. They had made it off Xantha. That was a start. Chapter 7. The Turning Tide. The Resistance outpost wasn't what Eli had expected. Nestled inside a hollowed-out asteroid, the base hummed with life. Scrappy fighter craft lined the makeshift hangar, their hulls patched with scavenged parts. Engineers in mismatched uniforms worked side by side, some sporting cybernetic limbs and others wrapped in tattered cloaks that once bore the Empire's emblem. It was a hub of determined chaos. Therek guided them through a narrow corridor, the walls studded with exposed conduits. Eli caught glimpses of improvised living quarters, armories stocked with salvaged weapons, and groups of alien species huddled together over holographic maps. It was clear that, despite their disjointed appearance, these people were organized. The air buzzed with a kind of nervous energy, like the moments before a storm. Most of these folks have been here a long time, Theric said as they walked. They've been waiting for something big to tip the scales. When word got out about the artifact, well, let's just say they're finally starting to believe things can change. Belief's good and all, Eli replied, scanning the corridor ahead. But it won't keep the Empire off our backs. That's why you're here, Theric said over his shoulder. Naira's got the data. You've got the guts. Together, we might just pull this off. Eli wasn't entirely sure how he felt about being called the guts of the operation, but he let it slide. The truth was they had more pressing concerns. As Theric led them into a central chamber, the noise from the hangar faded, replaced by the hum of a large holographic projector. The chamber's walls were lined with screens showing real-time surveillance feeds, and a few resistance leaders stood around a long table, their faces illuminated by shifting blue light. Naira stepped forward, confidence radiating from her as she addressed the group. We have what we need to go live. The artifact signal has done its job, drawing the Empire's attention away from key systems. Now we need to hit them where it hurts. An older, grizzled resistance fighter with cybernetic implants crossed his arms. And how exactly do you plan to do that? Their fleet outnumbers us 1,000 to 1. We don't fight their fleet, Naira said firmly. We target their propaganda channels. The Empire relies on control through information. If we can override their broadcasts, we can show the galaxy what they've been hiding. The truth will cause unrest on their core worlds. That unrest will spread. You think the galaxy will rise up just because you tell them the Empire's bad? The man challenged. People already know that. They're too scared to act. Not if we show them that unity is possible, Naira countered. We've already built a network. Planets that have been isolated, controlled, and suppressed are starting to talk to each other. This is our chance to prove that the Empire's strength isn't absolute. Eli watched the exchange, impressed by Naira's poise. When she glanced his way, he gave her a small nod of encouragement. She had a way of speaking that made people listen. He'd seen it on Xantha, and now he was seeing it again here. Another resistance leader, a younger Xanthian with a sly grin, leaned forward. What about countermeasures? You don't think the Empire will just let us broadcast to the entire galaxy, do you? They'll jam the signal or trace it back to us. Naira turned to Eli. That's where we come in. Eli's going to help us reroute the transmission through several relay stations. By the time they figure out where the signal's coming from, it'll be too late. Eli raised an eyebrow. I am. You are, Naira said without missing a beat. You've worked with communication systems before. You understand how to mask signals. That knowledge could save us. Eli sighed. No pressure, then. Theric chuckled, patting Eli on the shoulder. Welcome to the Resistance. The meeting continued as the leaders debated the best way to handle the Empire's inevitable response. While they talked, Eli and Naira stepped aside to examine the schematics of the relay stations they would need to reach. The tension between them had eased since the early days on Xantha. They had fallen into a natural rhythm, each instinctively complementing the other's strengths. You really think this plan can work? Eli asked quietly as he studied the schematics. It has to, Naira said. If we wait any longer, the Empire will tighten their grip. This is our best chance to reach the galaxy before they can shut us down completely. Eli glanced at her, noticing the determination in her eyes. You know, if this goes sideways, we'll be right in the middle of it. Naira nodded. I know, but I'd rather be in the middle of it with you than doing nothing at all. Eli smiled faintly. That makes two of us. They worked late into the night, finalizing the details of the broadcast and preparing the transmission arrays. By the time the other leaders had dispersed, Eli and Naira were the only ones left in the chamber. The holographic displays cast a soft glow over their faces as they went over the final steps. You should get some rest, Naira said, her voice softening. Tomorrow's going to be difficult. Eli leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. Yeah, you're probably right. Not much use if I fall asleep in the middle of it. Naira smiled. You've come a long way from the man I found in that wreckage. Eli glanced at her, a glimmer of amusement in his eyes. I'll take that as a compliment. It is, she said. We wouldn't be here without you. Eli hesitated, then nodded. Thanks. That means a lot. They shared a brief, quiet moment before Naira stood and motioned toward the door. Go rest. I'll finish up here. You sure? Eli asked. Naira nodded. I'll be fine. I'm used to long nights. Eli rose from his chair, stretching as he did. All right, but don't stay up too late. You need to be sharp tomorrow. Naira gave him a small smile. I'll see you in the morning. As Eli walked back to the crew quarters, he felt a strange mix of anticipation and unease. The broadcast would either unite the galaxy or paint a giant target on their backs. Either way, it would be the turning point they'd been waiting for. Chapter 8. A New Dawn. The makeshift control room was cramped and buzzing with nervous energy. Screens flickered with incoming data, their glow illuminating faces filled with a mix of anticipation and dread. Eli stood near the main console, his arms crossed, while Naira worked alongside a Xanthian technician to finalize the broadcast sequence. Tharek hovered in the background, his imposing frame still as a statue, though his eyes darted to the entrance every few moments. 30 seconds, Naira said, her fingers flying over the console. All systems are green. Once we start, there's no turning back. Eli glanced at her, his voice steady. You sure everything's locked down? No chance they'll cut us off mid-transmission? They'll try, Naira replied, not looking away from the controls. But we've rerouted through so many relays that it'll take them too long to pinpoint the source. We'll get the message out before they can stop us. Good, Eli said. He shifted his weight, the tension in the room pressing down on him. Let's make it count. Tharek finally spoke, his voice low. If the Empire tracks this back to us, we won't have time to run. They'll send everything they've got. Then we'd better hope the galaxy is paying attention, Eli said. He turned back to Naira. Are we ready? She nodded, her hands pausing over the console. We're ready. Eli stepped closer, his gaze locking with hers. Then let's do it. Naira pressed the final sequence, and the broadcast went live. The room filled with the hum of power surging through the array, and the central display lit up with the transmission's reach. One by one, dots appeared on the screen, planets, stations, and colonies receiving the signal. This is Naira of Xantha, speaking on behalf of countless worlds silenced by the Galactic Empire, Naira's recorded voice said. The message echoed through the room, clear and resolute. For too long, they have hidden the truth. They have taken what they do not own, controlled what they cannot create, and silenced those who would speak out. But no more. Eli watched as the message spread, each glowing on the map representing another location where the transmission was being received. He felt a strange mix of pride and apprehension, knowing that this moment would determine everything. They're scrambling their interceptors, Tharek said, his voice cutting through the tension. We've got a small fleet heading this way. How long? Eli asked, his eyes still on the map. Minutes, Tharek said. Maybe less. Then. Ayer's exploitation, the fabricated threats they used to maintain control, and the suppression of countless species. Each word was a call to action, urging listeners to unite and challenge the Empire's rule. Tharek's voice broke through again. They're entering the system. We need to prepare for an assault. Eli turned to him. What's the escape plan? Escape? Tharek raised an eyebrow. You think we're walking away from this? Naira interjected. We focus on the broadcast. If they destroy the relay, we'll already have sent the signal to enough systems. The rest will follow. Eli exhaled slowly. So we hold. All right, let's hold. As the Empire's ships closed in, the outpost's defenders scrambled into position. Eli grabbed a sidearm from a nearby rack and joined a small group securing the entrance. Tharek took up a position near the main corridor, his plasma rifle gleaming in the dim light. The first tremor shook the base as the Empire's frigates fired their opening volley. Dust fell from the ceiling, and one of the technicians stumbled, nearly toppling a stack of equipment. Status, Naira called out, steadying herself at the console. The broadcast is still stable, the Xanthian technician replied. But they've locked onto our location. We can't hold out much longer. Eli shouted from the doorway. Then let's finish it. How much time do we need? Less than a minute, Naira said. The final segment is uploading now. The sound of blaster fire echoed through the corridors. Therek's voice boomed over the comm. We've got incoming. Eli turned to the small squad near him. Hold the line. Just keep them off the control room. The defenders braced themselves as a squad of Empire troopers pushed through the outer corridors. Energy bolts streaked down the hallways, forcing Eli and the others to take cover behind makeshift barriers. He popped up long enough to return fire, then ducked as a shot ricocheted off the wall near his head. Naira! Eli shouted over the commotion. How much longer? 30 seconds, she yelled back. Make it 20, Eli muttered, squeezing off another volley. Therek's voice rang out again. They're breaching the outer door. We can't hold them back forever. Eli gritted his teeth and shouted into the comm. Naira, tell me we're done. A pause. Then, Naira's voice, calm and steady. The transmission is out. It's done. Fall back, Eli yelled. Everyone, fall back to the central chamber. The defenders retreated, covering each other as they moved. Eli was the last to leave, firing a final shot before sprinting down the corridor. When he reached the control room, Naira was waiting, her eyes locked on the monitors showing the galaxy-wide transmission. It's over, she said quietly. No, Eli replied, breathing heavily. It's just starting. The screen showed worlds lighting up one by one as the transmission was received. The Empire's fleet continued to hammer the outpost, but the message had already spread beyond their reach. Therek entered the room, his armor scorched but intact. We need to evacuate before they level this place. Naira nodded. We've done what we came to do. Let's move. The three of them hurried to the escape vessel, their path illuminated by the glow of success. The galaxy was listening, and the Empire would never be the same again.